Strongly cautioned, the following programs are intended for mature audiences over the age of 18. These programs may contain some material that many parents would not find suitable for children and may include intense violence, sexual situations, coarse language, and suggestive dialogue.
Happy Saturday. Welcome to another episode of Sound Injection. We are here with the man, the myth, the legend, Thom Hazaert himself.
Woohoo!
No pressure.
Man,
you weren't kidding though about that intro. You're like, don't worry, you still got time. We're gonna run the intro. Like, I could have ran like to the store 15 minutes away and came back. Like, you weren't kidding.
Yeah.
I'm glad you covered all the bases. I mean, obviously, you knew I was coming on. You had your little disclaimer: this show may contain sex, murder. I'm glad that
Yeah,
you
covered all the bases.
Good.
Be smart about that.
You got to nowadays.
You got to. I mean, there might be some murder. You never know. You never know what's going to happen when you have me on your show.
I know. I mean, Facebook kicks you off.
Might have jaws biting.
I mean, Bruce might jump. Shark attacks. You didn't have shark attacks in your disclaimer. You might want to
next time
talk to legal about that.
I'm going to now. That's going to be in the NDA.
For those of you that are watching, this man has pretty much done it all across the entire industry of heavy metal music, which is absolutely insane. I don't know how the hell do you even have free time?
Right?
Define free. I don't know. Not really.
do you ever get to do shit you want to do?
It's funny. I always feel like I don't feel like I'm ever doing anything. I'm just like, okay, Like I feel like I have nothing going on ever. And then people are like, "How do you do it all?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm laying on my couch playing fucking Skyrim right now. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like all I have is free time."
I got you. I got you. So the first question I got is at what point did you decide that you wanted to get into music? Like how did you even navigate that?
I did not. It decided for me. Music decided I wanted to get into it. So,
All right.
look, since I was a kid, that was all I did. That was all I was into. And I mean, I got into the business when I was, music and dogs, apparently, as you can tell. I got into the music business when I was 14, 15.
Wow.
And I'm old now, so, you can do the math. 30 plus years, I've been doing this shit, so it's a long time.
That is.
Extremely long time, an extremely long time. Now, was there ever a band that that's what made you want to do music? Was there like that one aha moment or that one band or whatever that you were like, this is absolutely what I want to do with the rest of my life?
I don't know. There's a lot of, when I was younger, it was basically Metallica, Maiden, Anthrax, Megadeth, a lot of bands I ended up working with in some way, shape, or format. But yeah, I don't know if there's one particular band. Just the whole experience of the business is always something I was kind of morbidly fascinated with. There was a local band here. I'm from Green Bay, Wisconsin, originally. And there was a band from here, Coco. Sorry. So there was a band from here called Crawl. They were called Bleed. Well, first they were called Nothing Sacred, and then they were called Bleed, and then they were called Crawl. And they were the first band I was a big fan of them growing up. And it's funny because now, I reissued some of their records on Combat a couple of years ago, and now I'm about to put up their new record on my label, and we're still dear friends. But so I watched those guys go out, get a record deal, tour. And they were the first band I had ever seen or known who really did that, So to me, that was like the fucking big time, you know what I mean? They, got a shitty record deal and they went out on tour and they, toured and did some stuff. And to me, when I'm 16, 17, that was the fucking big time, you know what I mean? So, and I tell them all the time, they were one of the reasons that, really, they were the band that made me go, okay, this is possible. I can just be, some stupid kid from Wisconsin and still go and do this. And, so years later, I got on a Greyhound bus and the rest is history.
So how was touring back then compared to now? Was it as expensive and as difficult as it is these days?
It was difficult. It was different. It was a lot more fun back then. You know what I mean? But I don't know. It was a lot, and it depends what level. You know what I mean? Touring in a van. Back then I think people were a lot more willing to just jump in a van with a suitcase and just go for 2-3 months at a time. And I think back then was to not go home. You know what I mean? Now I think everybody's a little more coddled, and bands aren't quite as willing to. But again, a lot of the bands touring now are older. You know what I mean? A lot of the bands touring now are the legacy bands, are older guys, and so it's different. They're not really, like I manage Taproot, and what we do is basically weekend warrior stuff or fly-ins. And for years before, I kind of sort of developed this, this apparatus for doing this. Kind of working with some of the 80s bands, with Autograph and Slaughter and those bands, and that's what they did. And I'm like, this is really smart, because the shitty days are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You can't film. Nobody's there. It brings down morale. It makes everything super fucking expensive. You end up with these dumb, crazy 20-hour drives to get across the country. There's just certain areas where you can't get from A to B without doing, from the West Coast to the Midwest, 25, 30, 40-hour drives.
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of bands have sort of adjusted to this new paradigm of sort of what we've been doing with Taproot and sort of what, again, Autograph and all those bands that were on my previous label that I was doing stuff with, where they were sort of doing just these kind of big money fly-ins, festivals, and we're kind of cutting out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the shitty weekday shows. We just play Friday, Saturday, maybe Sunday, and then we're home. And it's a lot better for morale. You're not in a van with 8 dudes for fucking weeks. You know what I mean? Like even in a bus, I mean, you laugh at the van, but even in the bus, it's just a giant fucking meat tube. You know what I mean? Like having dudes in a bus, the smells are just as bad as a van. You know what I mean? It's just
I couldn't imagine.
You know what I mean?
I don't want.
It's a little better. It's a little better, but but generally, when you tour in a van, you get more hotel rooms and stuff. When you're in a bus, you're like, well, we can't afford hotels because we're in a bus and we have bunks on the bus, so you tend to sleep on the bus more. When you're in a van, you tend to get more hotel rooms. So I mean, it's really a horse apiece kind of.
That's some words of wisdom right there. Everybody, if you want to have a hotel room, you got to get a van.
That's why my hat doesn't fit, because my head's so big from all this wisdom and
all the knowledge.
It's like we were like, man, this man's got so much knowledge. Just be time to just absolutely tap into that, especially if there's any like upcoming bands watching. Listen to this man, because he's done it all, seen it all, everything from journalism to working for records.
I started out as a journalist, so I started out originally as a. So it's funny. So when I was like 14, there was this huge. You remember newspapers? You remember those? There were these huge printed things that everybody used to get their news from before the internet.
Yeah,
and everybody.
I'm old as dirt. It's okay.
Okay, well, there used to be this thing called kids gather on. Grandpa's Pop's going to tell you a story. So these things called newspapers, and everybody read them. So in my town, there was a 200,000 circulation Gannett Group daily called the Green Bay Press Gazette, which was a huge newspaper. The circulation was huge, and so they had a teen page. So I started writing for this teen page, and usually it was just like these like dorky kids writing about their high schools and. But I started doing music reviews and concert reviews, and I realized real quick that, holy shit, I write for a 200,000 circulation Gannett Group daily. I can write whatever I want, and through that, I was smart enough to go, all right, if I figured out what a publicist was like, and if I called the publicist from Roadrunner or whatever label, they would send me free CDs and free records and tickets to shows and set up interviews. I mean, I was basically the kid from Almost Famous. I mean, 15, 16, running around the country, around the Midwest, interviewing Type O Negative and Life of Agony and Korn and, all these bands that I liked. And, so I started out with the Press Gazette, and then I ended up writing for Circus and Metal Hammer and another industry trade called Foundations, which was a part of Concrete, who were Bob Chiappardi, who ran Concrete, has been one of my mentors. Literally, I met him when I was 16, 17, and he gave me my first real job in the business, and he's had my back since, man. 30 plus fucking years. I just talked to him a couple weeks ago, and he's great. But Concrete, man, I mean, they had their hands in everything in the 80s, man. The Concrete Corner samplers and little videos, and I mean, you couldn't throw a fucking rock without hitting something with the Concrete logo on it. So they did the Foundations Forum, which was a huge. The only show Temple of the Dog ever played in their career was at Foundations Forum in LA. You know what I mean? Like it was. Yeah. And I actually got to go to Foundations Forum a couple times before it met its untimely demise, and I made literally some of the biggest, deepest connections I ever made in my life through Concrete and that Foundations Forum. So. Yeah. But I started out as a writer. So long story short, I started out as a journo, and then segued into marketing and management and all the other bullshit that I do.
So what was the first band that you ever managed?
Fuck, the first band that I ever managed. God, that's a good question. Probably my own bands, which I don't really count. Let's see, the first real band that I managed. God, well, I managed Nonpoint really early on. And I'm trying to think of the first band I officially met. Maybe Hydrovibe. I used to work at this band called Hydrovibe. And Matt ended up going on to play guitar in Kelly Osbourne's band, and he ended up being a really in demand. He plays with Seal now. He's Seal's guitar player. So probably them were the first real band I managed. A band called Hydro Vibe from Louisiana, and then they moved to LA, and I moved to LA, and I got Gavin from Incubus in the band after the original DJ after he left Incubus before Make Yourself. He kind of, it's like probably Hydro Vibe. And there was another local band here called the Stokens that I worked with, and they were good friends. And again, same thing. They followed me out to LA, and we put out a couple records and did some stuff. And those are probably the two first real bands I managed. And then the first, real band I got signed and I managed was probably Chimera.
Okay.
Yeah, well, technically I managed Switched at the same time. I started managing Chimera first. I met Switched through Chimera, but Switched got signed first. But technically I managed Chimera first. But yeah, I ended up getting like 4 bands from Cleveland signed to major labels inside of 4 years. And then a band called Depswa from LA who were on Geffen. I got them signed to help Papa Roach get their deal with DreamWorks. And I did A&R for Jive for like 5-6 years. I was an A&R scout for Jive, and I brought them, Non-Point and Papa Roach and a lot of these bands that I really liked, and they passed on. And I did a tally once. I think the bands that I brought to Jive that they passed on have sold 35 million records now. So,
wow.
Yeah. So I heard a rumor. Is it true that you were the one that actually discovered Papa Roach?
No, I mean, look, I was the first person that tried to. So look, their original managers were a guy named Brett Baer and Gary Avila, who managed them like from the beginning in Sacramento, like from the first. So I met Brett first, their manager, and this was like when their first fucking EP, Old Friends from Young Years, had come out, and this was before I even moved to LA when I lived in Wisconsin, and he sent me that demo, that first fucking demo. And I loved it, and really, and this was 7 years before they got signed. I mean, this was real early on in the band's trajectory. And I mean, look, as far as business, I mean, at the time, I wasn't even really a real business person. But as far as like the first real person in the business that was interested in them, yeah. I mean, I was the first one that tried to sign them. I tried signing them to Jive, and Jive passed. So and at this point, I'd moved to LA. And so basically, I set up the showcase, and Brett and those guys were in Northern California at the time, so I was kind of the LA guy. And I set up a showcase at the Troubadour and went to DreamWorks and invited the guy who signed them and went and met with all the labels and invited them all down for the Papa Roach showcase at the Troubadour that they got signed off. And so really, technically, Brett Baer and Gary Avila were the guys who were their managers and really, again, they were with him from the fucking beginning and put in all the real hard, shitty grunt work. But I did, come in later in the process and brought, a lot of the real industry attention to them, and that was before they had Last Resort or any of that shit. You know what I mean? They had Barbed Wire. They had a couple other songs that ended up on the later records. But there's just something about what they did. It was this kind of cool new metal thing, but they had those like cool Iron Maiden style guitar harmonies, and there was just. And I remember Michael Tedesco, my boss at Jive, said to me once, he said, "Out of all these bands, Tom, this band is the one that you think is special and is going to be bigger than all of them." And I said, "Abso-fucking-lutely," and I was right. I mean, he wanted to sign Relative Ash, and I wanted to sign Papa Roach. I'm pretty sure I won that one.
Well, that's a damn good thing you did, because now they're one of the biggest bands that's out there today.
Right.
Yeah, and the cocksuckers still haven't given me a platinum record. Like, really? You've sold like 80 million records, and Dave, the original drummer, Dave Buckner, the original drummer, was a mensch, and he was going to get me one. He was like, "Dude, you deserve a plaque, and we are going to get you one, I promise." And then he got kicked out of the band, and they still never did. So I love you guys, but fuck off and send me a plaque, assholes.
Right.
Now you know. Bands forget real quick, and bands love to rewrite history, and it's like, it's like literally, I went, sat down with the dude who signed you and said, "Hey, this band is playing at the Troubadour tonight. Come see them." And he fucking signed them. You know what I mean? Like, some of these bands where it's like, I mean, and I still see them, and they're so cool, but it's not like, you know what I mean? Like, if somebody ever did something that huge, had that huge of a hand in my career, I would, you know, they would have carte blanche to anything I did for the rest of my fucking life. Like, it's just how it happens. Some bands are just like, oh, well, fuck that guy. You know what I mean? And I'm always the fuck that guy. You know what I mean? That's just sort of how it ends up. But whatever, man. You know, I have the stories, and no one can dispute them. So, haha. I still see Jacoby. I run into those guys, and we've been doing a lot of the festivals with Tapper the last couple of years, and I run into those guys, and they're great. They're cool dudes, but again, it's so kind of sort of is the answer to your question.
No, that works. That works. So, how did you end up in A&R?
I don't know, by accident.
Well, NWO. Who is that?
NWO Dennis Rodman is going to answer this question.
That's what I thought it was, Dennis Rodman. I'm like, wait a minute.
NWO. I found this in my house the other day, and I'm like, I didn't even know this existed. Such a thing existed, let alone I own it. But I do. Apparently, I own NWO Dennis Rodman. And yesterday,
Dennis Rodman was into wrestling.
I didn't either, but that's why I was puzzled.
For like a day, like, oh yeah, he ran away from. He was supposed to be he skipped out on Bulls rehearsal to go to Detroit and go do a WWE thing, and that's why it's so funny that there's a figure, because he was like on wrestling like one fucking time, I think. and it was actually him and Conor McGregor were having a brawl earlier.
Oh yeah.
See, free time.
I don't know who's going to win that one.
Dennis is way taller. I mean, I don't know, man. Connor's kind of a psycho though, so I don't know.
I'm going for Connor.
Let your listeners decide. Okay, both of you guys listening right now, let us know. Dennis Rodman or Conor McGregor. You put up a poll on the screen. What was the question? How did I get into A&R? Yeah. Again, kind of by accident. I mean, look, when you're the music business has always been kind of a boys' club, kind of a rich boys' club, like kind of LA. There's a lot of nepotism and a lot of like, it's super greaseball shit, and even especially back then, it was, the internet didn't exist. Like, you couldn't just, I'm going to just be in the music business. You know what I mean? You had to have your in. You had to basically it was like getting a fucking green card. You had to get, or a visa. You had to get sponsored into it. You know what I mean? Like, but basically management was the one thing that they didn't control. So anybody could manage a band. And if you managed a good enough band and took them to labels and got them signed, you were a fucking manager. You know what I mean? So that's why a lot of these early bands I managed, like Chimera and whatever, they all fucking fucked me and fired me after I got them their deals and we made the first record. And bands of grass is always greener somewhere else. And I don't begrudge them for it, because I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. I was a 22-year-old kid. You know what I mean? It was like, but again, hey, the Doors manager was a 22-year-old kid who was their friend, and they stayed with him for their whole fucking career, and they figured it out together. You know what I mean? And I felt like I would have figured it, and I did figure it out. And but so sort of through the management thing, I got a bunch of bands signed. I mean, I guess I did A&R first, and Tedesco just liked me, man. So, he knew I had good ears, and, so I started out doing a lot of street marketing stuff, a lot of the street team stuff. Remember when you couldn't go to a show without 70 assholes trying to hand you stuff? So I was one of the main people responsible for that in the general consciousness. I'd worked at Immortal Records, and they were doing some street stuff for Korn and Incubus. And I kind of took that and took it to a different level and built a street team of like 200,000-300,000 kids through this new thing called the internet. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but at the time. And so I built this massive street team. And it's funny. So I think it kind of started with Fred Durst. So, I met Limp Bizkit real early on. They were on tour with Korn. I think their first tour was with Korn and Delinquent Habits on the, I think it's the Follow the Leader tour. And, I went and hung out with Limp Bizkit, and me and Fred kind of became friendly. And so I think I actually did the Head PE Street team, and I did some stuff for Jive first, which is, I guess, how we segued into this whole thing, because that was how I got plugged into Jive and Tedesco, who eventually just liked me and hired me to be an A&R scout, and paid me a modest stipend to do so. So it kind of started with Jive. I did a Tupac record for them, and then the first Ed P record, and and I became friendly with Fred, and I was doing with the street team stuff, and he said, "Dude, that's awesome. We have to do that for Limp Bizkit." I'm like, "All right." So I remember this, like to this day, I can hear it. So me and Fred and got on a conference call with Jordan Schur, the guy who owned Flip Records and eventually ran Geffen, but basically the guy behind all of it with Limp Bizkit. He signed them.
Yeah.
The money guy. So me and Fred and Jordan Schur get on a conference call, and Fred goes, "Hey, Jordan, this is Thom. We're going to start a street team, and he's going to run it." And I remember Jordan, he said, "Fred, I don't want to do that." "No, we're not." And Fred said, "Yes, Jordan, we are, and Tom's going to run it." And that was the end of it. Fred got his way, and we started the Flip street team, which, ended up going on to do these guys, Stained and Limp Bizkit, and they gave me a plaque. They gave me plaques. Thanks, Limp Bizkit.
Got your plaque.
Corey Taylor is a cocksucker and broke one of them. They say, you remember when Limp Bizkit and Slipknot had their little stupid feud?
Yeah.
Well, Corey came and slept over at my house that night. And it was so funny because I remember for some reason, this will give you some context to time. It had just came out. We went into Hollywood and went to Tower Video. This is the oldest statement you're going to hear today. We went into Hollywood to Tower Video and bought the Clerks animated series on VHS because it had just come out. I hadn't seen it, and Corey's like, "Oh my God, you have to see this. We're going to go buy it." So we did. And then we hung out. We just, like literally, Corey used to come and sleep on my floor in my bedroom. Like that's, So and then that night, so he walks in my room. The first thing he sees is the significant other, like 2-3 time platinum plaque. But I still have my $3 bill, y'all, when I wouldn't let him touch that. And he goes, Biggie, tonight I'm breaking that. I said, "No, Corey, you're not." And yes, I am. Just like it went sort of like the Fred Durst, Jordan Schur conversation. I'm like, "Fine, asshole." And I'm like, "Then you're replacing it." All my stories come down to assholes who don't give me plaques. And Corey's like, "I promise, I'll replace it with one of mine. I'll give you one of mine. One of my personal, made out to me, one of my personal Corey Taylor ones, if you let me do that." So I did, and it was funny. I actually kept it for years. We demolished it with like baseball bats and sledgehammers, and then he duct taped it back together and signed it, and I had it for years. I wish I still did. I moved too much; it vanished, and at the time it was just a piece of garbage that I didn't really care about. Now in retrospect, I'm like, "Fuck, I would have held on to that for dear life." But yeah, it ended up somewhere in a landfill in California, probably. But it was pretty funny. And forever, I had the pictures of us doing it too, but those went the way of the buffalo as well. So, but so that's a long way to get around to saying, yeah, I used to have 2 Limp Bizkit plaques. Now I have 1.
Yeah.
And
Sounds like you need another one.
I do.
Yeah, you need to call him up and get on another record.
And it's such a bummer too, because I never got a Stained plaque. And so John Wysocki just passed away, their original drummer, who was a dear friend of mine for 30, 40 years. I'm really happy because we just kind of reconnected before he passed away, and he had a band called Lydia's Castle, and I was helping them with some stuff. And so we had just sort of reconnected, and I'd gone down to Nashville a couple times to hang out with them. And he was going to order me one. He's like, I'll give you one of mine, but if you want, I'll just order you your own. And then he was going to order me one, and then he passed away. So, but whatever. Oh. I'm more bummed that he passed away. I could give a fuck less about the plaque. He did give me this. I don't know if you saw this before. This is the original Tormented cassette. These don't exist, man. These things are like the rarest, like the original cassette. And he gave me like 5 of them sealed. Like still, I think I have a sealed one in my drawer. Let me see.
Yeah, you can't find a whole lot of sealed tapes anymore.
Oh, I have shit tons of them. Here's a sealed one. Look at this. Sealed in the plastic.
Wow.
Hey, literally, if you go on Discogs, here's some Taproot VIP passes.
Holy
Anyway,
he's like, I just got all this stuff.
Records, Bruce. I mean, I got it all.
At this point, you might as well open up your own damn museum.
Conor McGregor. Right? I basically have one. You can't see it. And normally, I would use my good camera and like show you. But yeah, I basically have one. I mean, I'm surrounded. I'm a giant fucking nerd, and this is my nerd cave. Without the technology, you could literally convince yourself that you were living in 1991, probably in here. I mean,
That was a good year.
very. It was a damn good year. Yeah, very retro. Very. Yeah, it's all music and pop culture bullshit.
Yep, video games.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I got a Space Invaders machine over there.
Yep.
Well, I mean, probably no. You can see the Chicago Bulls. No,
I was a big pinball. I loved pinball. I still do love pinball.
I still love pinball too.
I mean, I can all day long.
Me too. I'm a pinball enthusiast to say, but yeah. So, but yeah, no, I don't know what the fuck how we even got on that topic, but anyway, but yeah. So I have some stained cassettes and they're really cool. Thanks, John Wysocki. So this is better than a plaque probably because no one in the fucking world has these. And I'll give it up. My other friend Mike Woglam, who worked at Flip. So Flip was the reason I moved to LA. Funny enough. So one of my other friends who worked at Flip, who passed away now, called me and he goes, "Hey, dude, we got a job for you. We're gonna hire you as a marketing, whatever, a marketing guy for Flip. Just get out to LA." So I got on a fucking Greyhound bus, gave up everything, went to LA, and got there. He's like, "Oh, sorry, bro, we don't have a job for you." Oh, that was cool. That's cool. Thanks, bro. So I figured it out, though. I did okay. But yeah, my buddy Mike Woglam, who was one of the other guys who worked at Flip, he actually has had a stained plaque in his garage years ago. He's like, "Dude, I want you to have a stained plaque. I know you never got one and you deserve one. So I'm going to give you mine. It's sitting in my garage. You just got to get it." And every time I'm in California, it's become this like funny thing where it's like, I got to try and go up to Santa Clarita or wherever the fuck you live in the middle of nowhere to get it. And so I was like, "Oh, I'm coming into Hollywood. I'll bring it." And then we just don't connect. And, "Oh, I'll ship it." And then he never, but yeah. So theoretically, I do have one sitting in Mike Woglam's garage. So thanks, Mike.
So as a
the whole interview is just going to be about people who owe me fucking plaques.
Hey, that's fine.
Hey.
We like the story.
What's the list? We'll let them know.
So, as a journalist and all the millions of major rock stars you've ever interviewed, do you have one that's your absolute favorite?
Man, I don't know. I mean, I've done so much now. I'll say this. Probably the one that sticks out in my head the most, and I tell this story the most, was probably Peter Steele when I was like 15, 16 and writing for the good old teen page we talked about earlier. I remember I was scared out of my fucking mind. Like I set up the interview with Roadrunner and they're like, "Yeah, just go." So I walk up to type a negative bus, just this little fucking stupid kid like, hello. And Peter opens the door and looks at me and goes, "What do you want?" And I'm like, I literally shit myself. Interview. And he's like, "I'm just fucking with you. Come in." So he was the most, and we became dear friends and all those guys. I saw him a million times after that. And that's literally out of all the interviews, the millions of interviews I've done, I think that's literally the only one that sticks out in my head, I mean, a couple of years ago when I was working with that fucking guy from Megadeth, we had a youth music foundation that was really cool and a really cool charity thing we were doing. But we did these couple like live stream marathons basically that were like 20 hours long. That it was like everybody you've ever seen in your life, like from Zakk Wylde to Korn to literally every Slayer, like every rock star in the world was on these live streams. And that was pretty crazy to do too. I mean, it was literally just like a 20 hours of like straight interviews. Like imagine doing what we're doing right now, but for 20 hours. And then we did it again the following week. So we did it twice.
Good.
Wow.
Right.
A couple years ago, Post Malone ended up on our podcast by accident too. That was a fun one too. The press had a field day with that the next day. We were just on talking to him about metal bands.
How did that happen?
Fuck, that's a loaded question. So Austin's dad, Rich, is a friend of mine. I met him, became friendly. They're all big Megadeth fans. And again, at the time I was working with that guy from Megadeth who used to be in Megadeth before he got kicked out. And this was when he was in Megadeth before he got kicked out. And I just became friendly with his dad. And we started talking, and we had a lot in common. He's, a little closer to our age. He's like in his 50s and super old school, like kind of cool metal guy. And, and through that, I became friends with Austin, and we started texting a lot. And he'd just text in the middle of the night, like Austin would just text me like videos of the Big Four and be like, "Look what I'm watching," And he's a super super cool metal dude, big Megadeth fan, big metal fan. And so one day I was talking to Rich, and me and David used to do this kind of weekly, whatever the fuck, semi-weekly live stream. And I just asked Rich, I'm like, hey, you want to be on our live stream tonight? And he's like, yeah, well, I'm going to be over at Austin's house. I'm like, yeah, we'll jump on. So his dad came on. He's like, hang on, let me go get Austin. So he just went and got him and dragged him out of his bedroom, and he came on, and we just talked to him for a half an hour. And we'd actually just done so I was the singer in his solo band for several years too, and we had just done a Post Malone cover. I wanted to do a Post Malone cover, and we did Over Now. And that had just come out, and Austin really liked that too. So we were talking about that, and it just sort of fit with everything going on at the time. We'd just done a Post Malone cover, and he was a big fan, and it was all cool, man. He's a super rad guy. I went and hung out with him a bunch of times, and I've been to his house in Utah, and his dad's amazing. Awesome. His stepmom, Jody, his family's, great. I mean, I took my kid, Jay, to his house. We went and hung out with Rich, killed a rattlesnake. It's been a journey.
Good time. Sounds a good time to kill a rattlesnake.
I know earlier you mentioned that you were involved with a Tupac album. How did that happen?
Just jive. They were really interested in the street marketing stuff I was doing, and that was when they were putting out the first posthumous Tupac record, Are You Still Down, with his mom, with Amaru. And he was like, yeah, you want to work on this Tupac record? Yeah. So I just built it's some of my kids, but I built kind of a specific street team, for the Tupac record of kind of hip hop kids, and kids wanted to work on it. And so, yeah, I just built a street team so at the time, what I did a lot of was I would actually build a street team. I would just go in for these labels and build them their own in-house street team. I did for Jive, and that's what I did for Flip. I mean, and that Flip street team that Jordan didn't want to do ended up, I built it to like 300,000 or 400,000 kids, and that's what blew up Limp Bizkit. That's what blew up. I mean, again, Limp Bizkit still, they literally, people say that's the Jordan. Eventually, they gave him Geffen because he was so successful, and people have told me privately and said it on the record that success with the lifestyle marketing of the street team is a big part of the reason why Flip was so successful and why Jordan got Geffen in the first place. So it's cool. It's cool to be involved in. And then later Jordan, did a deal with me for Depp, Swan, Geffen. You know what I mean? So the love was cyclical. You know what I mean? You built these cool relations. It's funny. I still remember sitting down with Jordan Schur in his office at Geffen, and doing the deal for Depp, Swan, and it was interesting shit, man. The big machine was fun. There's nothing like it anymore. You can't really do big rec, but I mean, back then it was just like monopoly money, just big, like, just the ridiculous things. Like, I want $1 million. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, it was dumb. It's just dumb to even think about. You know what I mean? Like, there was a 22, 23, 24-year-old kid negotiating, $1 million record deal, like 200-page $1 million record deals. Like, what the fuck,
Right.
Yeah. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I figured it out, man. I read a lot of Robert Passman books. Yeah, there used to be these things called books before the internet. They kind of looked like this. They had a bunch of pages in them, and
words. Are those words? Not sure.
And you can read these, and they were
not in cursive, is it?
Yes.
Because if it's in cursive, it's all over with.
No, it's. But yeah, so I read a lot of the music industry. I was obsessed with. It's so funny. So I remember this. I remember the turning point moment in my entire career. I was in Orange County in Norwalk at a movie theater seeing Jerry Maguire when it came out, right? I love Cameron Crowe. I always loved Cameron Crowe. Yeah. I mean, Ingalls, all of his movies. I fucking love Cameron Crowe. I still do. And his life. So he did Almost Famous. And so the kid in Almost Famous is kind of mirrored after him. And it's really funny because I've always felt this kinship to Cameron Crowe because, again, his story kind of mirrors mine. He started out as a journalist, as a teenager, kind of writing for Rolling Stone and kind of doing the same sort of thing. So, but I've always loved Cameron Crowe, and I find a special kind of inspiration in his movies. And and Jerry Maguire, for whatever reason, just seeing that guy go up against this business with this one fucking client by himself inspired me. And I'm like, I'm going to fucking do that. And I was like, my 3 favorite labels at the time were Immortal, Roadrunner, and Geffen, because I was obsessed with David Geffen. I was obsessed with Roadrunner as a label, and Korn at the time was my favorite fucking band, and I just interned out Immortal. And, you know, the labels back then were a little more of a lifestyle. You just kind of liked every band on the label. You liked the label, you know. So I said, okay, I'm going to manage bands and do real well with it. And the first 3 deals I'm going to do are going to be with Geffen, Roadrunner, and Immortal. The first deal I did was switched with Immortal. The second deal was Roadrunner with Chimera, and the third deal was Depswad Geffen. So I did it.
Yeah. Put your mind to it and look what happened.
Yes, you could have all this.
on that, how do you feel about the state of record labels now as compared to back then?
I mean, they don't exist. I mean, they're not. I mean, I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I feel like they're dead. There's no
record labels barely exist. I mean, it's not even, you know, I mean, it's stop calling me. Yeah, record labels don't even exist. I mean, and I run a record label, you know, it's just kind of it's a little just more of like you know, labels are a little more, you know, lean now. Like what I do is a little more management label. It's a lot more independent, a lot more family oriented.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, I have Taproot, I have Simon Says, I have these bands that I'm really close with, and we just have a really good relationship. I'm their manager, I'm the label. So again, I just have a distribution deal. I put out the records. It's, you know, it's one less person they have to pay. It's one less hand in the pie. It's, you know, one less, again, and generally a lot of the functions of management and label are so overlapping now that it almost makes sense where it's one. I mean, look, back then it really didn't make sense because there was so much money and so many things and so many moving parts. You know, it kind of made sense to have them be separate. Yeah, but again, to have them be separate just because, see, you know, like the Eagles, David Geffen was their manager, their label, their agent, you know what I mean? And again, there was really nobody looking out for the band's best interest. Now, there's so little money and so little shit going on that it's like you don't need 9 people, 20 people to do the job. You know what I mean? One guy can efficiently be the label and the manager and whatever else, you know?
Right.
Yep. Right. Jack of all trades, pretty much.
And look, and I've ran just after my A&R stint. I mean, I, you know, started a label, my first label, Corporate Punishment Records, and I put out like 80 records. I, you know, signed Ivan Moody's first band before Five Finger Death Punch, well, after Motograder, but I signed his first band after he left Motograder, which was Ghost Machine, and put out that record. And you know, I did a lot of cool stuff with that label. And yeah, I mean, the bands I turned down in this moment. I turned down Suicide Silence. It's funny, like the bands I turned down, kind of like the Jive thing. Like I turned down all these bands. But again, it just wasn't I turned down Five Finger Death Punch. I literally was with Ivan. He was like, dude, you got to hear this new shit we just did. And he played me the original Five Finger Death Punch. And he played. It wasn't like The Bleeding, but it was Way of the Fist. And a lot of the songs that ended up on that first record. I was like, dude, we're doing that. Well, what did you think about signing it? And at the time, I was kind of winding the label down. And I was just fucking over it, man. I'm not going to lie. I was fucking over it. And I said, dude, I'm winding the label down. I'm over it. I'm done. But this is amazing. And you guys will get a huge deal. And you'll be the biggest fucking band in the world. And they sure as fuck were, you know, so.
Yeah. Especially like them, and I was a huge fan of Suicide Silence, so that kind of hurt my heart. I was like, no.
Well, you know, keep in mind though, Suicide Silence then weren't what they became. You know, this was like their manager Jerry Clubb was, you know, was a big Chimera fan, right? And he, so I mean, a lot of the kids back, it's so funny. A lot of these dudes are like huge industry dudes now. Back then were just like kids trying to get into the business. And I always sort of related to that. So I'd always got to give them the time of day because people did it for me when I was a kid. You know what I mean? Exactly. So, but their manager was just this kid named Jerry Clubb who'd come and hang out and send me demos and send me stuff. And I mean, at the time, the band was not great. I don't even recall, but it might even have been before Mitch was in the band. I mean, it was real early on, and it was not great. It wasn't the Suicide Silence they became, but even then, like that wasn't really my thing, man. I came out of 80s metal and new metal thrash. Like I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really get the like deathcore, metalcore, and I don't want to say metalcore because I mean, look, stuff like Chimera, Killswitch. I mean, Chimera. I worked with that band. You know what I mean? It's like I'm the one who told Mark Hunter, "You need to sing more." You know what I mean? Like, which kind of became the basis of metalcore. But I just didn't really get the screamy. I mean, I don't even know what you call that sounds. I mean, but I guess it's just metalcore now. But I mean, again, to me, metalcore has the implication of more like clean singing and stuff. And now I get it. I like Suicide Silence. I like their new records. I like the new singer. Like they're heavy. I get it. It's just fucking brutal and heavy and fun. But at the time, that wasn't where my head was at. You know what I mean? So it just wasn't really. Yeah. I was always more into like even Chimera, man. They were like that, and I was like, dude, sing. I said, you know what you need to do? Take this heavy, old school type shit you guys are doing, and fucking sing. Like do melodic, clean vocals over it. And he did. And everybody called him new metal, and he hated me for it. And now it's considered a classic fucking record. But he hated me for years because I told him to fucking sing and hired Mudrock to produce Pass Out of Existence. And everybody new metal. And then they got pissed off and went and made their classic record Impossibility of Reason because they were so pissed off that people called him new metal. They went and made one of the classic metalcore albums of all fucking time. So.
Right. So that leads me into the next question. How do you feel about all this like new wave of metal that's coming out where they're using saxophones and lots of keyboard and stuff like that compared to like the older metal bands?
Dude, I fucking hate it. I mean, I'm honestly, I've never even been a fan of like, oh God, I'd never say shit like this. I'm usually pretty political. I've never even been a fan of like wizard metal. Like I'm not really into like, I don't really like, I like Dream Theater. But I don't really like keyboards. I've never been a fan of keyboards. You know what I mean? Other than like Europe and a couple bands, like I don't know. I've just never been a fan of keyboards.
It's a different vibe.
Yeah, I mean, it's just and I even Dragon Force when they came out, like I fucking hated it, and I came to terms with it, and I became friends with Herman, and it kind of grew on me. And I mean, there's just certain things that it's just like I'm not a huge fan of it, man. Like here's one thing. I don't like people trying to make metal funny. Like to me, metal is like a serious genre, and like I get there's people that they can do this like ironic hipster bullshit with it, and it just never really did anything for me. You know what I mean? I don't like anybody who takes metal and makes it like ironic and hipster. Like just make good fucking metal.
It's not what it is. Yeah.
I mean, and, look, to be honest, I don't even listen to fucking metal anymore. I don't listen to a lot of new stuff. I'm not around like, oh yeah, this is my favorite new metal band. And I mean, not NU, but it's like, honestly, everything I listen to is 30 fucking years old for the most part, or
I get that.
I listen to sports talk radio, podcast, Post Malone, and like fucking Mother Love Bone and Motley Crue. Like that's weird old and weird old hip hop. You know what I mean? But I mean, that's it.
Yeah, which I'm right there with you. I kind of like got my heart hurt the other day because I don't really listen to like FM stations anymore, obviously, because now it's like all fucking Spotify or whatever. And I happened to turn the FM station on, and they're like, it was like the classic rock station, and they started playing Korn, and I'm like, when the fuck did Korn classic rock?
This is not your grandpa's classic rock, buddy. Like,
no.
Korn record is 30 years old. It's classic rock now.
I'm like, man. I'm sitting there about tearing up in my car. I'm like, God damn, this means I'm old.
No, you're old. Your AARP card is in the mail, buddy.
Oh, fuck.
They've been trying to send me that thing for years.
I know, but yeah, it is. Look, and it's so weird to see the transition, like when thrash, and now I turn on, it's funny, and that's all I listen to is when I listen to shit, it's like the classic rock station or whatever. And it's funny because when I was a kid, classic rock was like Pink Floyd and all this horrible, not that they're horrible. I mean, I love and appreciate Pink Floyd for what they are, but when I was a 15-year-old kid, I didn't want to hear fucking Pink Floyd. I didn't give a fuck, and all the classic rock stations played then were Pink Floyd and Journey and, all this old Zeppelin and now it's like Motley Crue and Def Leppard and Kiss and Ozzy and funny. And now I'm so sick of all that shit because they play it all on the radio. You know, if I ever hear
Yeah.
Every Rose Has Its Thorn again or Fallen Angel, I'm gonna blow my fucking head off. You know, it's
They do play that one a lot.
sure, they love it.
All right. So, with as much as you've toured, give us like maybe a rundown of like the 3 best tours you ever went on that you had the most fun on?
I don't know, man. I couldn't tell you. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember having any fun ever. So, I don't know.
You know, I've heard a lot of bands, and we've asked the question a million times on.
You know, to be totally honest, like, you know, I never really toured a lot. I mean, I'd go fly around and go to a couple different shows or but when you're a manager, you know, you just sit home. When you're the label, you sit home. It's not like I was really a tour manager. Like now, you know, Taproot, I'm kind of the tour manager too, and I run the merch. And again, I wear a lot of hats. They're all really big and they don't fit on my head properly. Yeah. But you know, I mean, again, a lot of my career, I stayed home. I wasn't really touring all that much. You know, it's funny. Yeah. I mean, the coolest tours. You know, I mean, I did a tour with David with our band. You know, a few years ago, and we went to Europe, and that was pretty mind blowing. You know, we did a bunch of shows, and you know, we did a show at the Underworld in London, and you know, all these legendary venues I've heard about for decades. Like, holy shit, I'm playing here. You know, I mean, that was fun, and we actually had Australia and Japan as well that we were supposed to go do, and then COVID fucked everything up. So, but yeah, I mean, like, just, you know, it's more just moments in time than tours. I mean, I was at the first couple Ozfest. I was at, you know, the first couple Warped tours. I was at Warped Tour when, you know, it was still kind of weird new metal. You know, Switch played Warped Tour. You know, it's like, you know, I was out with, you know, it's just I've been to these crazy moments in time that the moment you don't realize like this is like something that's going to be history, and then later you go, oh shit, you know, like,
yeah.
I remember seeing Snot and Machine Head and fuck, who else was on there? I don't know. Snot and Machine Head, that's all I remember, at the Vic in Chicago, and that was just insane. That was insane, you know. And but again, it's just being there more for these, like, you know, early Slipknot shows, early, you know, I mean, literally, I was at one of Chimera's first fucking real shows, you know, like, you know, it's funny, like, I watched that band go from playing for 20 people to 8 months later, we sold out the Odeon, which was like 1,000 fucking people, you know, and then it was just all downhill from there, you know. It's like just being, to me, it's just been more interesting being at these weird Forrest Gump moments in time where you don't, you know, I remember seeing Deftones and Korn open for fucking Ozzy, you know, and it was like, it was before Adrenaline came out. And I remember, you know, and I did an interview with Deftones before the show, and I did an interview with Korn, and, you know, and that was the first time I met Deftones guys. I just saw Abe the other day at Aftershock, and we caught up, and Abe and Frank, but Frank obviously wasn't in the band then, you know, but
yeah,
I remember sitting with Steph, you know, with Steph and Chi watching fucking Ozzy, you know, just sitting in the seats next to the stage watching Ozzy, you know, and I look back at that and actually, you know, you want a really crazy fucking Deftones story. I remember this, and I love this story, and I've told it a couple times. I remember the first, and it's funny because Deftones were like my favorite band too, so it's kind of one of these weird balancing acts because I was friends with them, but they were also like my favorite fucking band too, and they still are to this day. One of my favorite bands. You know, you can't beat the fucking Deftones. But so I remember, so Steph lived in Hollywood for a while, and I remember going over to his place. Excuse me. It was right when White Pony was about to come out. It wasn't out yet. They just finished it. He's like, dude, you want to hear the new record? I'm like, of course I want to hear the new record. So we got high as fuck, and he played me White Pony for the first time. And I just remember hearing Digital Bath and thinking my head was going to explode. And it might have actually. I don't recall if it did or not. And I remember that night, too, we had the conversation about, so Stefan played on the first Chimera record, Pass Out of Existence. And that was the night. Two interesting conversations we had that night that led to crazy things. Number one, I had the conversation that Steph really liked Deftones, or really liked Chimera. I brought him over to demos, and Steph was into really heavy shit, right? And he loved it.
Yeah.
So he was one of the people who kept bugging Monty Connor to sign them, which is him and Dino Cazares from Fear Factory both kept bugging Monty to sign Chimera, and he didn't want to, but they kept bugging him, and Jack Osborne started bugging him, and everybody started bugging him, and finally he's like, everybody sees something in this band that I don't, and he signed him. So he gave in to everybody's incessant badgering. But so that night I was like, dude, you should do something with them on their record, or do something with them. He's like, fuck yeah, I'd love to. And that came out of that night. He played on Rizzo on Past Out of Existence. And number two, we were talking about fucking Glassjaw. And I'm like, dude, there's this band Glassjaw. You got to check them out. They're fucking amazing. They just came out. You guys should take them out. And we talked. He's like, dude, and I got him into Glassjaw. And then Deftones ended up taking Glassjaw out not too long after that. So another funny Glassjaw story, I managed Earth Crisis in their new metal phase when Slither and Last of the Sane came out. And Glassjaw's first tour, I think it was their first tour, was with Earth Crisis. I gave them their first tour. We took them out with Earth Crisis. It was, I think it was, I don't remember who the opening band was. Was it Today Is the Day? I always get confused because we did this Motorhead tour with Motorhead and Morbid Angel, and Today Is the Day. I don't remember who the fuck, but anyway, Earth Crisis, Drowning Man. Drowning Man was the other band. It was Earth Crisis, Glassjaw, and Drowning Man. And I went out for a couple shows on that tour too, and just getting to see Glassjaw, like that was like, I didn't even think the first record was out yet. So just getting to see them when they were that young and energetic, I mean, that was another one of those things that was just like, fuck, you don't realize at the time, and you look back through the lens and you go, holy shit, man, I've seen some crazy shit.
Yeah.
That's nuts. So with our last question of the night before we end it, if there is any piece of advice you could give to anyone that's trying to get into your field, what would that piece of advice be?
Don't.
Run.
I mean, there is no field, man. It doesn't even exist anymore. It's like, I'm trying to diversify away from it. You know what I mean? Like, again, you just got to do it for passion. You can't do it for money. You can't like, oh, this is going to be my career. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to be able to feed my family and pay my rent, because you're not. Have a fucking day job and do this for fun on the side, because that's, I mean, I've been doing this shit for 35 years, and, it's still feast or famine. It's always been, so. But I also have, I have my skateboard company, Volatile Skateboards. We do a lot of licensing stuff. We do the Guar decks, we do Descendants, we do Fear Factory, Ministry, Helmet, Fishbone. We do a lot of licensed decks, and I have that, and we have our Volatile merch company. So I have all these other little avenues, that are kind of, just sort of what helps me piece everything together, But again, if you want to have rich parents, or have a day job, man. That's, pretty much it. Unfortunately, there's not much of a business left. I mean, you can't really, I'm going to do what you do, because you just can't. It's kind of like
different.
Certain things you can't do anymore. Like what do I do? I don't know. I have 40 years of knowledge and experiences that kind of converge to create these random weird things that I can do through my connections. But it's like you can't really do that anymore. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know. I don't even know what I even do, really. But I mean, if you're it's really a hard business to get into, because again, it doesn't really exist. There's not much of a traditional business, as it were, left. It's this real segmented, real independent, real grassroots kind of thing. And you can still do stuff in it, and it's fulfilling and fun and awesome if that's what you're into. But it's really a hard thing to go, oh, this is going to be my job, this is going to be my career. Like, no, it's probably not.
Right.
This can be your outlet away from your career and your job, where you go get to hang out with rock stars and have fun.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
All right, so on that, we have ran out of time. Thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time tonight to hang out and chat.
You are quite welcome.
We will be back Monday night.
And you realize like a quarter of that time was spent on your intro.
Yes, it was, but the outro isn't as long. So.
Good. Yeah, we got to end a half an hour early for the outro.
All right, you guys. We'll be back next week. We love you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tom. We appreciate it.
All right, guys.